Chapter 35. Something must be wrong with Fourth Master Swan. At night, it was so quiet. Jean lay on the bed and slept just fine. The sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly came from outside the room. "Miss, someone is looking for you." The servant was a little annoyed. Jean could understand that no one would be in a good mood if they were woken up in the middle of the night. At this moment, she was not in a good mood either. Who was looking for her at this time of night? Monica. She was always like this from time to time. "It's a man called Teddy," the servant said, clearly impatient. If it was not because the madam reminded the servants to respect the eldest young lady, who had been kicked out, they would not be so respectful to her. "What?" Jean frowned slightly. "He's waiting for you in the main hall now. He said he has something to hand over to you personally." After the servant finished, she turned around and left. Jean glanced at the servant's back and pursed her lips. She also walked out of the room and went downstairs. She really did see Teddy downstairs. Teddy saw Jean appear and hurriedly went forward. "Ms. Lawrence, you're looking for me. This is what Fourth Master wanted me to hand over to you." Teddy took out a cell phone and a SIM card. "The SIM card is still your original number, and the cell phone is new." Jean looked at Teddy and did not say anything. Teddy did not find this awkward. He took out another ointment and continued, "This ointment can reduce the swelling on your face. Fourth Master asked me to remind you to apply it before you go to bed. It'll reduce the swelling tomorrow." Jean still looked at Teddy without saying anything. There were a few seconds of awkwardness in the hall. After a long while, Jean could not help but ask, "Is something wrong with your Fourth Master?" Teddy was stunned and nodded. "He has been a little abnormal lately." Fourth Master Swan somehow did not want Teddy to follow him today and only returned to the manor at 9 p.m. He did not say anything when he returned. Half an hour ago, when it was midnight, he asked Teddy to send a SIM card, a cell phone, and a tube of ointment to Jean. Teddy suspected that his master had been terminally ill recently and became mentally disordered. Teddy said, "Please accept them, Ms. Lawrence. I shouldn't take something undeserved. Mr. Doolittle, please. My master said that if you don't accept them, I don't have to go back either." "Please, Ms. Lawrence, be magnanimous and let me go back to report the matter." Since Teddy had said this much, Jean did not want to make things difficult for him. She took all the things in his hands and said, "Help me thank Fourth Master Swan." "Okay." Jean took the things in Teddy's hands. Teddy politely bowed and turned around to leave. Jean looked at the things in her hands. It was a little baffling. She did not have anything to do with Fourth Master Swan tonight. After Fourth Master Swan said those words, Jean pretended not to hear them and left immediately. Fourth Master Swan did not say anything more. She thought that was it, but she did not think that he would send someone to deliver things to her. What was more, it was in the middle of the night. Jean lowered her head and looked at the phone, the SIM card, and the ointment. She was not a child. As such, she would not smile if she was given candy. She conveniently threw the ointment into the trash can. When she was about to throw away the phone and the SIM card, she hesitated for a moment. It was just that she was not used to not having a phone. Ellipsis. In the Swan family's bamboo garden. In a black and white, minimalistic, and high-class room, Edward was lying on a large black leather bed. He was wearing a white bathrobe and holding a phone in his hand. He was staring at the screen as if he was attracted by something. The moment Teddy knocked on the door and entered, Edward's eyes moved. Teddy said respectfully, "Master, I gave all the things to Ms. Lawrence." "Did she say anything?" Edward asked. "She asked me to thank you." "What else?" Teddy looked at his master. What else could there be? Edward turned to look at him. Teddy tried hard to recall. "Oh right." Edward's eyes were clear, and they flickered for a moment. Teddy said, "Ms. Lawrence asked if something is wrong with you." Edward's face darkened. Teddy did not dare to speak. "Teddy." Edward looked back at his phone and asked in a neutral tone, "How's the night view in Bamboo Garden tonight?" "The moon is bright, and the stars are twinkling. It's extremely beautiful. I'll reward you with a night view in Bamboo Garden. You're not allowed to return to the house before the sun comes out." Was it so difficult to tell the truth? Teddy left with tears in his eyes. Edward's expression did not change as he looked at the screen again. A message from Knox popped up on the screen. "Fourth Master Swan, did you see that? I sent you a short video." Edward replied slowly, "Yes," grabbing an adult man's arm with her bare hand and making him unable to move. It's obvious that she was trained. I'm afraid that Ms. Lawrence isn't simple. Edward completely ignored Knox's words and typed a few words. Let's see what happens to the locks tomorrow. Then, he placed his phone on the side. He lay on the big bed and looked at the ceiling above him. Looking at the faint light emitted by the black downlight, he was a little lost in thought. It seemed that he would not be able to fall asleep tonight. Ellipsis. The next day, the sky had just turned bright. Jean was woken up by the maid again. She looked at the time. It was 7 a.m. Jean did not disturb George's sleep and went to Jonathan's study. At that time, Alexander and Jennifer, as well as Jasmine and Joshua, were all there. Jean sometimes admired the dignity of the head of the Lawrences. She looked at Jonathan. Last night, the Swans were present. Jonathan had always gone to bed early, so he did not have time to teach her a lesson. This morning, he started to question her. Jean, before going to the locks, do you still remember what I said? Jonathan asked sternly. The anger in his voice could not be concealed, causing the others present to not dare to even breathe loudly. What are you referring to, Grandpa? Jean asked calmly. Jonathan's expression became even more unsightly. He suddenly slammed the table. It was very loud, scaring the others so much that their bodies trembled. Jean straightened her back and remained unmoved. I don't want what happened 7 years ago to happen again. Jonathan gritted his teeth. Grandpa, are you referring to when I was beaten half to death by my father's whip and that I wasn't allowed to be sent to the hospital? Or are you referring to when you chased me out of the Lawrences and sent me out of the country? Jean, you're challenging my limits. Jonathan was furious. Grandpa, Jean interrupted him directly, and her aura was very strong. Am I a Lawrence? Jonathan was stunned. Jean sneered. I once suspected that I'm not actually a Lawrence, that my father isn't my biological father, and that you're not my biological grandfather. Otherwise, how cruel must you guys be to be so harsh on your biological daughter and granddaughter? Jean, that's enough. For someone like you who doesn't know what's good for you, I'm already being merciful by treating you this way. The moment your mother died, I shouldn't have cared about you. Alexander said fiercely, I raised you for so many years in vain. How did my mother die? Jean suddenly asked Alexander. Alexander's expression instantly turned ugly. Didn't my mother treat you well enough by letting you have a mistress? If it wasn't for my mother, the Lawrences would have long become the next family to be eliminated. Enough. Alexander raised his hand. Jean's gaze hardened. She looked coldly at Alexander in front of her.